every person in the history of the world who has decided they wanted to accomplish something extraordinary with their life has had to deal with the same challenge. Critics. People telling them that they don't have what it takes, that they're never going to succeed. Who do you think you are? You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You're not whatever enough. It's a really, really common thing. It automatically happens. If you stick your head above the crowd, someone's going to throw tomatoes. And so if you want to be a successful person, you're going to have to learn how to deal with critical people. And something we have now that we didn't have when I was younger is a whole new phenomenon of anonymous critics, right? That social media has created this world where people can set up anonymous accounts, especially on platforms like, here on YouTube or Reddit or Instagram. And it gives people a lot of kind of fake courage. I call it virtual balls. People that are willing to say things anonymously on the internet that they would never have the guts to say to your face. And, Mike Tyson has a famous quote that he said, social media has made people way too comfortable with disrespecting others and not getting punched in the face for it. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And so, hey, if you're dealing with anonymous critics, here's my advice: just ignore those people. Right? If you try to battle with them, if you try to argue with them, you're really just giving them the attention that they want. The haters on the internet, the trolls, they're usually people who hate themselves. They hate who they see in the mirror, and they're trying to tear you down to try to make themselves feel better about themselves. And so just ignore those people. I just block them. Boop. In fact, I'm kind of amused by it, because you block somebody, you're stealing from them the one thing that they want, which is attention. So they set up another account and they attack you again, and boop, block that one. And what's funny is it takes them like 10 minutes to set up a new account. It takes me 10 seconds to block them. And so it's a battle they can't win. It's kind of amusing. But harder than dealing with anonymous critics, or what about people that right? That are, bullies, people who are, just always trying to tear you down. And it's hard. And some people, it paralyzes them. There's people who are going to die with their dreams still inside of them because they were just afraid of what other people are going to think. And my challenge to you is you got to get past that, right? Other people's opinions are not going to pay your bills. And so these people who are criticizing you because you want to start your own business, or because you want to learn how to play the piano, or you want to travel to Europe, or whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish, you just have to ignore those voices. And you have to chase your dreams, and you have to listen to the right people, right? People who have credibility, people who have a vested interest in your success. And but I'll tell you, one of the hardest types of critics to deal with are loved ones. Right? Well-meaning family members and friends who are just critical of your dreams and goals and passions and interests. And I'm going to tell you a story about the most difficult, dysfunctional relationship that I've had in my adult life that caused me a lot of pain and a lot of pressure before I learned how to deal with criticism in a more effective way. And this critic I'm talking about, is actually my father-in-law. My wife's father. He and I did not get off on a great foot, right? That I met Kathy in college. We dated all through college, and then I was going to propose to her at the end of my junior year. And I actually called up her dad and asked for his permission, to marry his daughter. And he kind of grilled me a little bit and then grudgingly gave me his blessing. So we got engaged. And I told the story in another video about how that next year I got offered a full ride scholarship to graduate school. So that's our plan. We're going to get married, and she's going to work, and I'm going to, get a master's degree. I'm going to be in school. Well, one day her father calls, and actually called her first, and she called me up crying. Oh, my dad isn't going to let us get married. I'm like, what? And then he calls me in my dorm, and I did not handle it well. He's like, oh, I just want to tell you, I've revoked my blessing. You're no longer going to marry my daughter. And I said, yeah, I am. Let me tell you how this works, Bob. I only asked for your permission as a favor to Kathy. I don't care what you think. I am marrying your daughter. And if you're not going to pay for a wedding, that's fine. We'll just elope, right? And if you're going to be nasty about it, we'll get eloped this weekend. And I hung up on him. That's not the mature way to handle it, I will admit. And so from that day forward, me and that guy, conflict. Every time I saw him, criticize. Fast forward, we did get married and have a wedding, and he was there, but he didn't say a word to me the whole weekend. Rehearsal dinner, nothing. Day of the wedding, nothing. Finally, one sentence, right? We come down the aisle. We now introduce Mr. and Mrs. Jeff Joyner. No. We come down the aisle. He comes walking up to me, pokes me in the chest, and he goes, "You better take care of her." And I was like, okay. So maybe when you got married, you got the speech, right? We're not losing a daughter. We're gaining a son. Welcome to the family. I did not get the speech. In fact, it just heated up the conflict between me and that dude. And so every time I saw him from that time forward, it was conflict. It was fighting. He would criticize me and I would attack him back and criticize him. He'd be like, well, you know what Bob, tell me, it was negative. It was stressful. My wife would be crying like, can't you get along with my father? And I'm like, no one can get along with your father. And so stressful. Well, fast forward, I started doing some speaking and training for a living and doing all kinds of topics, leadership and selling skills and attitude and customer service. And one day someone said, hey, do you have any training on dealing with difficult people? And I said, well, I could put something together. And so I did some research. I read about a dozen books, pulled out a lot of good stuff, and I started doing this training called I Think I'm Allergic to Nuts, Learning How to Work Productively with the People Who Drive You Crazy. And it was very popular, conference topic that I would speak on. But in the back of my mind, I had kind of this guilty conscience that I'm telling everyone else how they can have these great relationships, and I have this unbelievably dysfunctional relationship with my own father-in-law. Well, one day I was reading a book on dealing with difficult people, and I don't remember the book title. I wish I did because I'd give credit to the author. But there was a little section in there that was revolutionary, and it gave some advice on how to deal with critics. And I was like, I'm gonna read this. And here's what he said. And I was like, He said, next time someone criticizes you, just agree with them. Oh my God, I don't know about that. But I'll give it a try. So I gave some wording in there and how they recommended. So next time I saw her father-in-law, we went down to South Carolina to visit. And I'm not in the door 2 minutes before he's on me. I don't even remember what it was. Criticize, what I did with my time, what I did with my money, how I parked the car, how often I go to church, whatever. And usually I would just fight back. And this time I just looked at him and I remembered what I read in the book. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? That's an interesting point. That gives me something to think about. Thank you. And he was shocked. I look at my wife. She's shocked. He goes, well, while we're on the subject, something else I think you need to change and blah, 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 blah. And I did it again. I said, you know what? That's an interesting point too. Gives me something to think about. Thank you. And he goes, well, okay. And walks out of the room. And my wife goes, what just happened? I think I got a new strategy on how to deal with your dad. And so that became my new shtick, right? Whenever he would criticize me, and I kept track over a period of like the next 3 years, like 23 more times, he would come at me about something and get all in my grill about something. And I would just say, you know what? That's an interesting point. Gives me something to think about. Thank you. I didn't admit I was wrong. I didn't tell him he was right. I didn't tell him I was going to change. I just told him, I just listened, validated what he said, and was gracious. And you know what? After about 3 years, the dude just stopped criticizing me. It just, all that tension that we had between us just was gone. It was amazing. And you know what? After that, when I started getting around him, we actually had good conversations and we started talking about some things that mattered. And you know what I learned? That dude had some pretty cool experiences in his life, right? That he served his country in the Korean War and had a successful career at IBM and had all these leadership things that he learned. And we actually became good friends. And, we'd go out golfing. I'm not a very good golfer, but he would try to teach me how to golf. That strained our relationship a little bit, him trying to teach me how to golf. And, but, we just got along great. And, for like decades after that. And, as I'm filming this video, today is actually the 4-year anniversary of him passing away. And I can tell you that I'm proud of the fact that we got that relationship right. And I sat at his funeral and had total peace that we got along great. And I didn't have any regrets in that relationship. And so I'm telling you, I've learned that you can't change other people, but you can react to them in a way that maybe makes them want to change how they respond to you. That makes sense? And so it's a powerful lesson. And I've had so many fun experiences with this one little thing. I was speaking at a conference in Kentucky one time. And when I get done speaking, a lot of times people will come up and want to talk to me afterwards, but I can tell when there's a critic coming. And so I had just given my talk about, I think I'm allergic to nuts, dealing with difficult people. And here comes this woman. Oh boy. And she's got a couple of her coworkers that are there with her. And I can tell that they're kind of embarrassed that they're, kind of coming along with her. And I said, well, hey, how you doing? And she goes, I got a bone to pick with you. And I go, really? What's that? And she goes, you talked a lot about marriage in your seminar. And you know what? Not everybody's married. Not everybody wants to get married. And I don't think you should talk about marriage. And these other women are like, oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. And I looked right at her and I said, you know what? That's an interesting point. It gives me something to think about. Thank you. And she goes, well, you're welcome. And off she walks away. And these two other women are like, you just did the thing. You just did the thing on her. And I go, I know, right? That is so effective. And I go, hey, is that your boss, right? And they're like, yes. And I go, you're going to need that little technique. You guys got your money's worth today. And I said, hey, by the way, let me ask. I go, I suspect I'm not, the only person she's ever criticized at one of these meetings. They go, oh no, she always does this. And I go, I know. In her mind, if she finds something to disagree with, it like lets her off the hook, and she doesn't ever have to change. And but I'm telling you, you either have to learn how to ignore the critics or how to talk to them in such a way that it minimizes some of the tension. But if you can learn to let the criticism kind of go in one ear and out the other. Now, sometimes you want to be open, right? If it's constructive criticism, you got to be willing to change too. But you can't let the fear of other people's opinions stop you from accomplishing extraordinary things.